Welcome to Beauty in Stories. This is a space where short, meaningful tales invite us to explore life's deep lessons and the beauty of emotions. Each story becomes a journey to listen, reflect, and rediscover values that are often overlooked in the busyness of life. Join us as we uncover inspiration, joy, and connection in these stories every day. And now, let's dive into today's story, The Old Fisherman. During the years my family lived across from Johns Hopkins Hospital, we became accustomed to the constant flow of people going in and out, carrying their burdens of pain, hope, or despair, depending on what fate had in store for them. But one evening, under the dim light of a street lamp, a small, frail figure appeared at our door, bringing with him an unforgettable lesson on kindness and the resilience of the human spirit. I was in the kitchen, preparing dinner, when I heard a knock at the door. Opening it, I was startled to see a peculiar-looking man standing there. He was no taller than my 8-year-old son, with a thin, frail body as if the sea itself had eroded him over time. His face, how could I ever forget it? It was like a scar carved deep by life, red and misshapen, making it hard for anyone to meet his gaze. Yet his eyes, though clouded, radiated a calm, almost serene demeanor.
"Good evening, ma'am,"
he said in a deep, warm voice, like a gentle invitation to trust.
"I've come from the Eastern Shore for medical treatment. I've been searching for a room since noon, but no one would let me in. If you have any space, I'd be happy to sleep on a chair. I don't need much."
I hesitated, caught between unease and pity.
"I suppose it's my face,"
he continued, as if reading my mind.
"I know it's frightening to look at, but the doctor says a few more treatments, and I'll be better."
I studied him again. The deep wrinkles etched into his face were like the grooves of a life lived through hardship. Yet there was no bitterness in his tone.
"I promise not to trouble you,"
he added.
"I can pay, and I'll leave early in the morning so I don't disturb the children."
After a brief moment of silence, I smiled and replied,
"No, you can't sleep on a chair. I'll prepare a proper bed for you."
He looked up, his eyes widening as though he couldn't believe what he had heard.
"Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much,"
he whispered, his voice trembling with emotion. I returned to the kitchen to finish preparing dinner, while the man stood quietly in the hallway, clutching a small, worn paper bag. When dinner was ready, I invited him to join us. He shook his head.
"There's no need, ma'am. I have food here."
He lifted the paper bag, revealing a few pieces of stale bread.
"That won't do.
I insisted.
You must eat with us. There's plenty of food, and the kids will enjoy having you join."
The man hesitated but eventually sat down, moved by my persistence. At first, the children stared at him curiously. But soon, they forgot about his unusual appearance and began chatting excitedly.
"Where are you from? What do you do? Do you have grandchildren?"
they asked, their voices brimming with curiosity. He smiled gently, his eyes softening.
"I'm from a small fishing village, many miles from here. I'm a fisherman. And yes, I have a daughter and 5 grandchildren. They're wonderful kids, but I have to work very hard to take care of them."
His stories transported us to a distant world of crashing waves and small boats battling the vast sea. He spoke of his son-in-law, who was paralyzed in an accident, and of his own illness, Yet his voice carried no trace of resentment.
God is good.
He said, his eyes reflecting a quiet faith.
This illness doesn't cause me pain. And I can still work. As long as I have faith, I can endure anything.
I said nothing, simply listening in admiration of his unwavering optimism. Later that evening, as we all sat together, the children clustered around him, eager to hear more about his life by the sea.
The sea,
he began, his voice resonating like a distant tide,
is a great teacher. It's generous but strict. It gives, but it also demands respect.
Does the sea ever get angry?
My youngest son asked, his wide eyes full of wonder. The old man chuckled gently, his gaze distant as if recalling memories long past.
Oh, yes. Little one. When people take without gratitude, the sea reminds them. I've seen many greedy fishermen cast their nets, wanting more and more. But then, the waves rise and take everything back. The sea doesn't forgive disrespect.
Curious, I asked.
So why do you keep going out to sea? Knowing the risks?
He paused, his voice trembling slightly as he answered.
I have no choice. My grandchildren, 5 little ones, and my daughter depend on me. My son-in-law, he was a strong man, a skilled fisherman. But after the accident, he can't do anything anymore. Every time I set out, I pray for just enough fish so my grandchildren won't go hungry. The sea has taken much from me, but it also gives me a reason to keep going.
A month later, the old man returned, carrying a large fish and a basket of freshly shucked oysters.
I just caught these this morning,
he said, his hands trembling as he placed the gifts on the table.
You and the children made me feel at home. This is a small token of my gratitude.
I was deeply moved.
You didn't have to do this. Your health and well-being are all that matter to us.
He smiled, his face softening.
No, ma'am. One cannot only take and never give. That's what the sea has taught me. It always gives, but it expects gratitude in return.
From then on, the old man became a part of our lives. Every time he visited, he brought gifts from the sea and stories that left us in awe. He taught the children how to shuck oysters and spoke of the dangers and joys of returning home safely from the waves. Our neighbors once said,
"You're foolish to let that hideous man stay. You'll scare away your other tenants."
But I didn't care. Anyone who took the time to know him would see he wasn't just a tenant, he was a teacher of life, reminding us of the power of gratitude and kindness. Eventually, he stopped coming. We received a letter saying he had passed away. With it came a final gift, a small wooden boat, engraved with the words,
Thank you for giving me a home.
I held the little boat in my hands, tears streaming down my face. Life can be harsh, but kindness is a guiding light, illuminating even the darkest places. The story of the old fisherman is a profound lesson in compassion and tolerance. It reminds us that appearances are but a shell, what truly matters lies in the soul and how we treat one another. And the old fisherman taught us that lesson through his humble life and simple acts of kindness. Kindness is not a choice, it is a gift you give to enrich yourself. He didn't just teach us how to give but inspired us to live with gratitude, optimism, and appreciation for what we have. His life proved that, amid life's challenges, kindness is the light that guides us, helping us overcome difficulties and connect with one another. True happiness doesn't come from receiving, but from the joy of giving. As Victor Hugo once wrote, "The poorest are not those who have nothing, but those who cannot give. Thank you for joining Beauty in Stories for today's tale. I hope these moments have brought you meaningful insights and inspiration. If you enjoyed the content, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you won't miss any upcoming stories. See you in the next one.
Goodbye!